Every weekend, somewhere between 10 and 12 million people visit a single strip of parkland in Seoul. That is roughly the entire population of London, arriving and leaving within 48 hours. The place is the Han River Park, a continuous chain of green spaces stitched along both banks of the Han River for nearly 80 kilometers. Most cities would consider one world-class riverside park a civic achievement. Seoul has 12 interlocking ones. The question worth asking is not simply how this happened, but why a city famous for relentless density chose to reserve this much space for doing absolutely nothing productive. Just sitting, cycling, and eating instant noodles by the water. The Han River Park system covers approximately 3,300 hectares of public land, according to the Seoul Metropolitan Government. To put that in context, New York's Central Park is roughly 340 hectares, meaning the Han River parks together are nearly 10 times larger. The parks contain around 110 kilometers of dedicated cycling and walking paths. Seoul's population density is approximately 16,000 people per square kilometer, according to Statistics Korea, one of the highest of any OECD capital. Despite that pressure, the parks charge no admission fee. A survey published by the Seoul Institute found that residents visit the Han River parks an average of around 15 times per year. And a separate report from the Seoul Metropolitan Government noted that convenience stores and food vendors along the riverbanks generate hundreds of billions of Korean won in annual revenue, suggesting the park has become a genuine economic zone, not just a recreational one. For most of the 20th century, the Han River was not a place Seoulites went to relax. It was an engineering problem. The river floods dramatically during summer monsoons. The Korean Meteorological Administration records average annual rainfall in Seoul exceeding 1,400 millimeters, much of it compressed into July and August. In the 1960s and 1970s, the government's priority was flood control and industrial use. Embankments were reinforced with concrete, and the riverbank was treated largely as infrastructure, not public space. The shift began in earnest with the Han River Development Project, launched under Mayor Kim Yong-rae in 1982 and completed in 1986, timed deliberately to precede the 1986 Asian Games and the 1988 Seoul Olympics. The project dredged the river, standardized the embankments, and opened the first public parks along the banks. Critically, it also buried or relocated many of the industrial facilities that had crowded the waterfront. What had been functional concrete was recast as civic green space, a deliberate act of political image-making that happened to produce genuinely useful public infrastructure. The Han River parks are not without trade-offs. Environmental scientists at Seoul National University have raised concerns that the heavily engineered embankments reduce ecological connectivity between the river and its natural floodplain. The 2009 Four Major Rivers Restoration Project, overseen at the national level, drew particular criticism from environmental groups for prioritizing recreational infrastructure over river ecology. Maintaining the park system also carries a substantial public cost. The Seoul Metropolitan Government's annual parks and green space budget runs into the hundreds of billions of won. Access equity is another tension. The parks are most easily reached by residents who live near riverside districts like Uido, Banpo, and Tokseom, areas that overlap significantly with some of Seoul's higher-income neighborhoods. A 2021 Seoul Institute report on urban green space access noted persistent disparities between riverside districts and inland working-class areas. The park is free to enter, but geography is not. The Han River Park story is ultimately about what a city decides its infrastructure is for. A flood control embankment became a social commons because political will, international pressure, and civic investment all converged at the same moment. That combination is rare but not unique. The Thames Path in London and the High Line in New York followed similar logic, turning industrial remnants into public assets. What makes the Han River case distinctive is the scale. Nearly 80 kilometers of continuous public waterfront in one of the world's densest cities, free to everyone. Urban planners from cities as different as Hanoi, Istanbul, and Bogota have studied the Seoul model. The broader pattern is clear. Cities that treat rivers as amenities rather than drainage problems tend to build social cohesion in ways that are difficult to measure but easy to feel. The Han River did not transform Seoul by accident. Someone had to decide that public space was worth it.